And this is KEXU 96.1 FM, Pole People's Revolutionary Radio. I'm JV with my co-host Karena Akri Paez. Welcome back, Karena.
Thank you, Joey. Buenas noches a todos.
Absolutely. And we are here. We're going to have a good interview today. We're going to be interviewing revolutionary rapper Rebel Diaz, and he will be coming on in a minute. And I've been a fan of his music for some time, and this brother, he's on fire, and so he's going to be joining us in a minute. But we did want to discuss an important document first from the Chicano News Service, and this document is a document from Mao Zedong, and this is his piece called "Talks at the Yenan Forum on Literature and Art." Now, literature and art. This is what This is what we refer to as cultura workers. Cultural workers. Cultural workers are essential for any people, any nation, any people that are struggling for national liberation. The cultural workers are essential. And when we talk about here in the United Snakes, we don't live in the conditions that are ripe for something like armed struggle today. The conditions ain't right. The people are not conscious, in the numbers that we need in order to get to a point like that. And that's in the future. But for now, in today's era, we are in the time of raising consciousness and building public opinion. We believe that today we're in a stage of building public opinion. This means raising consciousness of the people, of the masses, Chicano masses. And this is done by many things. One of the things that it's done is through our cultural workers, and our cultura workers are very important. These are the writers, the artists, any kind of artists or writers that create culture, revolutionary culture. These are very important workers amongst the nation. And the state has their propaganda. We need our propagandists as well. We need propaganda that fuels the revolutionary movement, that fuels people's ability to grasp a revolutionary theory. We need people to translate our goals and objectives of a future liberated Aztlan in a way that the people can grasp it and understand it and partake in it. And this is very important. This is why Mao wrote this piece, and he wrote it in 1942. That, of course, was before China acquired national liberation. This is when they were building up to it. They formed their Communist Party, and they began their work in the cultural realm with propaganda. It was very important, and Mao wrote this beautiful piece, on literature and art. And he says many things. It's a pretty long piece, but he says many things in it. One of the things he says, and I'll just quote it here. He says that, literature and art fit well into the whole revolutionary machine as a component part, that they operate as powerful weapons for uniting and educating the people and for attacking and destroying the enemy, and that they help the people fight the enemy with one heart and one mind. And, uniting and educating the people. And so if you look at it, the writers, the artists, creating this art, should be creating art that unites the people, and writings and pieces that unite the people and also help people fight the enemy. And in this case, our enemy is, of course, is white supremacy, and to be specific, it's U.S. imperialism. And the state, sees us as the enemy as well. So it's a mutual feeling that we have, a mutual relationship that we have. We see them as the enemy; they see us as the enemy. Their writings and art, they have billion-dollar corporations that create and produce this art and literature. They have books, they have commercials, they have movies, they have Hollywood. All of this stuff continues to depict capitalism in a positive note, and thereby influencing the people to accept it, to think highly of it, to aspire to become wannabe capitalists, where they want to get rich, or die trying, So, this is the kind of propaganda that they produce. And so our version of art and literature is completely opposite of that. We want to teach the people that capitalism is bad, that uniting with the people to overturn the capitalist system, and especially U.S. imperialism, is a must. We want to create literature and art that captures the Chicano hearts and minds in a way where they understand, they overstand that in order for us to overturn this, we have to not only raise our consciousness, but raise everybody in our sphere of influence, raise their consciousness as well. And he digs very deep into this, and anybody who's studied Mao knows that one of the things, and I've said it many times before, that he says one of the great things that he says was that in order to understand a thing, you have to study not only the thing itself, but you have to study everything in its realm of influence, everything that it is influenced by, everything that it influences. So everything in its sphere of influence, and that includes the opposition, the contradictions. And so in our case, and he also talked about what he called a mass style. Because many artists and writers are coming from different class positions. They're coming from different environments, different communities, and a lot of times the masses may not understand some of these concepts and things that are being put forth. And this is what Mao said, that it's important that we study and understand the people, our audience, and who we are, creating this culture for, this art and literature. And by doing so, we can then better translate to the people where they can grasp it and understand it, and embrace it as theirs. And there's also a Maoist concept of from the masses to the masses. And that's very important too. And I believe that we can apply it to everything, including creating art and literature from the masses to the masses. This is when you take the ideas of the masses. What are the masses going through? Well, the masses want to be free from oppression. That's, of course. Okay, so what are they fighting? What are some of the forms of oppression? They might be fighting pig terror. The pigs are killing them in the streets, incarcerating them, mass incarceration, all of these things that people, within Aztlan go through. And you take their ideas, you concentrate them, you revolutionize them as much as you possibly can, and then you give them back to the masses. And then the masses, they form new ideas and opinions, and then you take those, and then you once again concentrate them, revolutionize them, give them back, and it's a perpetual cycle, a continuous um, cycle that occurs, and as you're doing this, the masses are gaining higher consciousness each round. When it comes to art and literature, that would be taking the ideas of the masses, their struggles and contradictions on the ground, in the streets, creating these articles, creating this artwork that captures their experience and what they're struggling for, showing through art them overcoming the struggle, allowing them to envision a society that is not yet here. But this is the job, the role of the artist, of the cultural worker, the cultura worker, is to capture these ideas, revolutionize them, give them back to the people, and then repeat that process. So this is, and one of the things that me and Karena, we've talked about this a lot, is that in this stage, in raising public opinion, raising consciousness, propaganda is very important, very essential. It's very powerful. It's in this stage, it's our most powerful weapon that we have, because we're not in a stage of armed struggle. So our stage is raising consciousness. Propaganda does that, and we shouldn't be afraid of the word propaganda. Propaganda, all it means is, disseminating one's ideas, and that's all it means. It's neither good nor bad. It's like a gun. It's neither good or bad. It's how the person wields it, how the person uses it. That's when it becomes good or bad. It could be self-defense. It's good. To acquire liberation, good. To do bad things to people for no reason, it's bad. So it depends. Propaganda is the same. We need our own propaganda. And art and literature is one way that we exercise, revolutionary culture, and agitprop, and what have you. But so Mao was real big on culture and revolutionary art, revolutionary literature. When you study different socialist countries who employed revolutionary propaganda in different ways, you will find, especially when it comes to art, in my opinion, China under Mao's China, they perfected revolutionary art. If you look at the countries of Mao's China and you look at other countries, you'll clearly see the difference in their artwork, revolutionary art. China, they poured a lot of resources into that. They understood the power of it. One of the, I want to talk about something else he quote, I want to quote him on something else that he stated in this article. And he says, the last problem is study, by which I mean the study of Marxism, Leninism, and of society. Anyone who considers himself a revolutionary Marxist writer, and especially any writer who is a member of the Communist Party, must have a knowledge of Marxism, Leninism. So it's kind of like when you talk about theory and practice, you could have, they need each other. It's like the omateo that the Mexicas say, the omateo, the duality. You need them both. You can't operate simply on simply, practice, and being out there in the street and doing this and marching and, creating actions and mobilizing people. You also need theory, because you need theory to ground yourself in ideas like Marxism, Leninism, Maoism. You have to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. You have to harness these revolutionary theories in order to advance your nation. And you can't do that. You can't create an action or mobilize the people in the right direction if you're not studying, revolutionary theory. It's very important. and vice versa. You can't just theorize. You have to also have practice that tests your theories. So you have to continuously test the theories that you're speaking of, coming up with, envisioning, and testing it on the masses, testing it in the communities, and then going back and then doing it again and continuously, in a perpetual way. But you know, um, it was very, very important to Mao, art and literature, and to many. Even Lenin wrote, a lot about it in, his piece "What Is to Be Done." That's another excellent piece where, Lenin said something to the effect of, "We need to weaponize our ideas," and that's actually, that's propaganda. That's revolutionary culture. Weaponize our ideas, in this way, expressing them through art and literature. Very important, very important. And every single, society that has been liberated has had their cultural workers at the helm. They've worked way before the revolution came. They continued through the revolution, and after the revolution, they continued. It's a never ending struggle. It doesn't stop with national liberation. So it's very important. This is why I get along so well, and found myself to be so, you know, um, drawn to Poor Magazine, because, Poor Magazine does understand the power of media. My co-host Garena, of course, understands the power of media, and so we understand it. We love it. We understand it. We're passionate about it. We understand its power, and it's something that's, gonna take Aztlan to the next level of struggle for sure. But, Garena, so what were your thoughts on this piece?
Yeah, so I wanted to give a little bit maybe of historical context so that we can kind of understand what are the forces that are coming through with this new aesthetic that Mao is discussing. For example, you mentioned that he's talking about, the actual style of the art, that it has to be from the masses, and then revolutionize it and give it back to the masses. Incidentally, I think one of the probably the best example that I've seen, other than art that came out of communist or up to leading up to or Mao's China, is the Black Panther Party. Because when you were talking about drawing the major obstacles from the community, I have a small collection of reprints of Black Panther periodicals, and probably the most dominant theme in those is the presentation of pigs in a police uniform. And so in almost every issue, you're going to see images of like a cartoon pig with a police uniform on, and then they revolutionize it. Like they cook the pig, like they arrest the pig. It's like all this. And so I would love to suggest that people look at Black Panther periodicals for a great example of how this was done in recent times. But anyway, speaking about this piece. Let's talk about, I guess, a little bit the political forces that are leading up to this, what I would say, reconfiguration kind of the Communist Party to more closely align with the strong center of the Communist Party, which was largely in rural areas by the mid-1930s. So just, for example, to understand the kind of political opposition that the Communist Party was coming out of, 1927 was the White Terror. Of course, we're looking at, thousands of communists being slaughtered for several year periods. So there's like a time of terror. And then, of course, from 1934 to 1935, there is a long march. And I think that is when you see the reconfiguration of the Communist Party to gravitate to the more like rural people, the rural workers, because they don't have access to, for example, the factory workers of Shanghai, right? So they are, the strong centers, didn't have access to those kinds of people. So when they arrive in Yenan, Yenan, of course, is then set up the center there. Yenan is, of course, being heavily bombed by opposition of the Chinese Communist Party. And one interesting thing is that the rural people lived largely in caves in Yenan, which provided them with some element of natural resistance against the bombings, because they lived in that type of areas. And also along massive farms were dug out of the sides of hills in that area. So there was massive farming going on. Also, with establishing the center in Yenan, Mao was able to show people that there was an immediate material benefits that came from things they instituted, like communal farming labor. And so one of the material gains from that, obviously, was that people were actually eating better, and observing like how important these communal farming labor systems were. But underlying the push to create a revolutionary aesthetic for the party at this time, it's important to understand, like, one of Mao's primary criticisms against the other artists and writers that were coming to Yenan was that he said they were writing too much from an individualist perspective. So he was saying they're getting lost. Basically, like, if I were to translate that, I would say, like, they're getting lost in lofty ideas that sound beautiful, that are emphasizing their own, like, individual, like, hopes and dreams and fantasies, whereas that is not really pushing forward the communist revolution. So Mao is asking writers and artists to look to things like the rich language of the people, like find beauty in the language of the peasants, and of the rural peasants, find beauty there. He even goes as far as to criticize artists and writers by saying that their language was actually insipid. And so insipid, like, what comes to mind there, it's like a food that has no flavor, like a food without salt. And so that's a very strong criticism, I think, for any artist to say you are without flavor, you are nothing. So he says, look to the richness of the language. He doesn't say, like, the rudimentary language of the peasant, the uneducated language of the peasant. He says, look to the rich language of the peasants. So he says that is the ideal. He turns the ideal from, like, the lofty, like, bourgeois intellectual ideals that, artists and writers of the university, of the academy. And he says, no, the real beauty, the real baseline of high art is coming from the masses. And so I will read briefly what he says about who are the masses of the people. So, in this piece it's 22 pages, so this would be on page 6 if you're reading along, and it's the last paragraph at the bottom. It reads, who then are the masses of the people? The broadest sections of the people, constituting more than 90% of the total population, are the workers, peasants, soldiers, and urban petty bourgeoisie. Therefore, our literature and art are first for the workers, the class that leads the revolution. Secondly, they are for the peasants, the most numerous and most steadfast of our allies in the revolution. Thirdly, they are for the armed workers and peasants, namely the 8th Route and New 4th Armies and the other armed units of the people, which are the main forces of the Revolutionary War. Fourthly, they are for the laboring masses of the urban petty bourgeoisie and petty bourgeoisie intellectuals, both of whom are also our allies in the revolution, capable of long-term cooperation with us. These 4 kinds of people constitute the overwhelming majority of the Chinese nation, the broadest masses of the people. So in that, he summarily identifies who are the masses of the people that this art and literature are supposed to be driving the communist revolution through. And so, as Joy mentioned, the objective in what he says is to unify the hearts and minds. So it's drawing out what is most beautiful from the rural peasantry, of the time, and creating that into something beautiful, and then giving that back to the people, which is something that will stimulate, like, an emotional response, the feelings of unity, of national unity, right? And so it's for that purpose that the art and the writing is supposed to be singularly focused on advancing the communist revolution.
Well said, Karena. Yeah, that was, and it's very important. Like, I like to think of it as, it's important to read, when I think about, if we didn't have classics like Mao's, talks in Yenan at the on art and literature, if we didn't have documents like this to teach us the importance of revolutionary culture. What do you think? What can happen if we had nothing to go on? If nobody tackled the topic of revolutionary culture, what are some things that come to mind? Where would our cultural workers today be at? Like what would they be doing? What kind of work would they put out?
They would probably be functioning as intermediaries of the media, being the ideological apparatus of the state propaganda. So as Joy mentioned, there's different types of propaganda, which of course just means the spreading of ideas, right? So if I'm talking about state propaganda, if I'm speaking from within the imperial core of the United States, and I'm talking about state propaganda, that I'm talking about, like MSNBC, people like sellouts like Calle 13, who else? Like the Mana, right? Because they took their own side on Venezuela. I know.
Very sad.
Yeah. And who else did we talk about? This weekend we talked about Ice Cube.
How about when we hear people talking about, Russia, get out of Ukraine? I mean, that's, they're totally eating up state propaganda, right? I mean, and there's so many ways that, people eat it up. Even the U.S. military has the propaganda commercials, showing the heroic, young youth, joining the oppressor nation, the white oppressor nation military. And you see this youth, brown or black youth family, like so happy and, smiles from grandma, and they're just so proud in their uniform. So this is the kind of thing that propaganda, it's able to turn a people who have been colonized, land occupied, into people that are joining the oppressor nation. And I mean, incredible.
Yeah, and that's why we have to compete with what is out there for as long as we possibly can in every sphere of public view. Let's face it, people are getting their news from social media these days. Compete with what's out there. Like, it's imperative to compete with what's out there. Like, of course we all wear many hats. We're not just on Facebook. We do this and that, and we all have many roles, but don't abandon the terrain, I guess I would say. Like, put your own stuff out there, and compete with what's there.
Because when you seed terrain, you're giving it up for the enemy. You're giving it up for the state. Like, I don't want to be on social media. Okay, so then you've just surrendered that territory to the state, to the enemy.
Exactly.
So we're not trying to give up not an inch to the enemy. So we have to battle like Che Guevara said, everywhere is the front, right? Don't matter where we're at, everywhere is the front line. We're battling U.S. imperialism and its ideology and capitalism everywhere in all areas, right?
And speaking of Che, he actually said, don't concede anything to the imperialists, not even a little bit. And so, like you said, we would be abandoning, terrain, especially of the generations that are about to, if we don't reinforce what we know, it only takes one generation to completely change your way of thinking.
Absolutely. And we've seen that 80s and 90s. Right after the 70s, we've seen the effects of state propaganda and repression when, and so now we have to rebuild and strengthen. But we're going to be taking a short break, and then we're going to have our guest Rebel Diaz on. So this is one of his songs, and we will be back in a minute.
type in a number. Let's see. Check if this is connected. Turn on the phone.
That phone?
Yeah.
No, I don't know if that's used to it.
Because we need
It's
that
not,
one.
it doesn't work at all.
No, not at all.
It's
I don't know
not
if
plugged
it's.
in.
That's what I'm wondering. I wonder if it's a button or it's just not.
Yeah, it's that one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, perfect. All right. Let me see.
Hello. Hey, what's up, brother? This is JV at Free Aztlan, brother. You ready?
Yeah, are we doing it? Is it just audio or is it video?
No, it's just audio.
All right, perfect. How do I sound? Do I sound good like this?
Oh, there you got your radio voice on, brother. Yeah, you got it. Let's do it. So,
All right, that's what's up, man. You sure?
all right, we're gonna bring you on in about a minute or two, brother.
All right, cool.
All right.
1 minute for the video.
And that was, of course, the work of Rebel Diaz. And we have the brother on now. And I just want to welcome you, brother Rebel Diaz. Welcome to Free Aztlan, brother. Brother, can you hear us? Oh, we lost him. So we're gonna get him back on online right now. And you know, we have technical difficulties all the time here. You know, at Poor Magazine, and you know, those are the quintel holes. You know, they're always on the hunt. They're always trying to get us. So you know, we got to deal with it. But it's you know, we've been dealing with it, right?
We'll keep dealing with it.
Absolutely.
Who's the number one person?
And yeah, so we're gonna get to that right now, but we are.
I would encourage anyone, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you are able to share the link to your social media to help amplify our audience. That would really be appreciated if you have a minute.
Absolutely. Don't forget to subscribe to that as well. Free Aztlan. So go to YouTube, search Free Aztlan, and we have all kinds of shows there. You know, we've been putting out some fire on that YouTube. You know, Karena has been just, you know, big contributions to that.
His entire phone cut off.
Oh, his entire.
They saying his phone isn't available right now.
Oh no. So we have some big difficulties here, and you know, let's just discuss the brother's work. Though you know, we've been listening to it for a while. You know, it's and this happens. You know, this happens a lot. And I noticed too. You know, as we're talking about when we're at May Day, and I was, you know, I had your speech, beautiful speech.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and that was, oh man, and of course it got cut off.
Aztlan Press was at Mary and Sakra Aztlan this weekend. And
he's back.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay, we'll continue that. Yeah. And we got Brother Rebel Diaz back on. Brother, welcome to Free Aztlan, Rebel Diaz.
What's going on, brother? Peace.
Absolutely. So, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I hear you good.
Oh, that's what's up. All right, brother. So, you know, first of all, I want to say, you know, I've been a fan of your music, and you know, it's very hard to come by, you know, music that's revolutionary, and you know, there's a few people out there, and you're certainly one of them. You know, we listen to you know, your sounds over here, you know, here in Cali all the time, and we love it. So, but let me ask you, you know, for the listeners, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself, brother. Like, what were you born at? What got you into revolutionary music?
That's what's up. So first, I want to be clear. A lot of folks, you know, usually make the same mistake because there's none of your job. But the Rebel Diaz as a group. Rebel Diaz started off as three of us, which was me, my brother, the producer. Like all the Rebel Diaz music is in-house production. That's my brother Z1. So I've been the frontman for Rebel Diaz for a while, but I go by the name Large Stars. But you know how it is. I first had a tight drum. He's Rebel Diaz, my brother's more low key. But you know, I was like to clarify that we got, you know, DJ Illinois, Dr. Member. So for a while, Rebel Diaz, a lot of times, it's crazy because even the name was inspired, you know, by some of the Zapatista, like our Giovanni, even like a Comandante Marcos. I remember the Comandante Marcos came out, so far as like first one was Marcos, you know? And so for us, Rebel Diaz, even as a word, when we put it together, we use it like a first name, last name. When we put it together, it's Rebel Diaz, like many rebellion. And so we wanted a name that was bilingual for the two. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what came up to be Rebel Diaz. But yeah, me and my brother, we both, our parents are from Chile. You know what I'm saying? So we're the children of exile. What we call the first 9/11, which is September 11th, 1973. There was a CIA and the military dictatorship in Chile that overthrew the socialist government of Salvador Allende. And so we come from that history, you know, the first 9/11. And we were born in exile. I was born in England. My brother G was born in Chicago. And so for us, we grew up around like culture being like a part of revolutionary concept. You know what I'm saying? So like, we grew up listening to like canciones, or like Víctor Jara. Víctor Jara was you know, a singer who, you know, was for the people. He was a communist, and he was down obviously with the government. And so when dictatorship hit, he kind of was a threat because his music was powerful and his words had a lot of meaning. And so, you know, he was killed along with a bunch of other political prisoners stadium, just to get further context. They had so many political prisoners. They filled up. Imagine if they filled up, I don't know, Dodger Stadium, there or whatever, Yankee Stadium full of prisoners. Crazy to see the think about it, So we come from a lineage of revolutionary music. I think Rebel Diaz is a little bit of that, like a mixture of us as immigrant kids listening to hip hop in the 90s, with a lot of political ideas that was never going to chill. You know what I'm saying? So artists like Mercedes Sosa, Ricky Imani, Mr. Hara, Papa Union, Yaku, Jimmy Rodriguez. I think there's a lot of our foundation at home. So, for us, Rebel Diaz and turn that, like, it's like hip hop never going to chill,
Yeah. And you guys, you just came from Chile. Weren't you in Chile recently?
Yeah, I've been, I've been active. I was in Chile for a month. I was out there a whole month.
Wow.
So yeah, I think it's crazy. In the last 2 years, Rebel Diaz has increased and less active. And I ended up going to Chile and working on a documentary. So it was crazy because that documentary, we were able to do some screenings on the West Coast in June. I'm going to be out there in June screening this documentary. Man, no lie, it's crazy. It came out and tried like a film festival, like this was a festival round, and for us it was just a project that we wanted to do, a historical document of the uprising of the social uprising in Chile of October 18th, 2019, which led to a new constitution being written, which is in process right now.
Right.
So, yeah, we were blessed. Like the director, V. Bravo, the Chileno homie, they hit me up, like, yo, you watch this news is going on out there. I was like, bro, I'm ready to roll. He's like, if I get money, you gotta go document. I'm like, I'm ready right now. So he literally there like a week later. He's like, yo, we out. And so we ended up going out there, and we were able to document from pretty early on this uprising. That was very powerful and crazy. Lasted a month. Thousands of people in the streets every day for months.
There were beautiful revolutionary images coming out of that rebellion. It was just amazing to see the images coming out. Just amazing.
Yeah, so we were on the ground filming, and so there's a documentary called Primera that I produced on it, and it's a powerful story. So we'll be actually in Cali in June, mid-June. We'll be out in the Bay Area, then we'll be in LA.
Nice.
Then we'll get to streaming. Definitely hit y'all with that information,
Absolutely.
We'll look forward to seeing that. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We definitely got a bunch of new music, a lot of new music in the works. But the pandemic, my brother lives in Chicago. I'm in NY. So, it was a little hard to keep a lot of the work going. But, like I said, I took advantage and went to Chile and just started making this film. And we've been working on that literally since 2019. It's been an effort. It's been dope. And that's how brought me to be in Chile a lot more. So I've been, working on music out there, but at the same time, also building bridges. We just had an encuentro in which we took 33 folks from New York, Minnesota, and Puerto Rico.
Nice.
Activists to check out the work in the Southern Encuentro, the Pueblo Encuentro Internacional de Pueblos en Lucha. So that's part of the work that we're doing in Chile. And so now we're going to do an impact tour with the film for the whole month of June, into the nationwide. And, those ideas, man, are like, the struggle for a dignified life is an international one.
Right.
And I think the example of the people, that are taking the streets, and hopefully changing, there's a fight of able to get a vote for a change constitution. We see as a historical moment. But at the same time, you got to keep the pressure on, because electoral politics have historically, taken the steam out of social movements. You see in Chile, the election of a former student activist, the youngest president in Chile's history, 35 years, Javier Boric. At the same time, in this action, you're seeing, a lot of Joe Biden syndrome, kind of like folks voted for the lesser of two evils, not elected the fascist candidate who was back. And so, Boric gets elected, but, now he's playing the centrist, neoliberal role, which has been the history of Chile for the last 30 years. And so you'll see, but there's violations of human rights still going on. Right now, we have a journalist who on May Day, this past Sunday, was shot by these narco delincuentes. It's a phenomenon that's happening in Chile, which is new with a lot of the realization, but there's been a lot of, right-wing, Lucan Venezuelans that have arrived, that are narcos, that are straight up narcos. And it's crazy because they're in cahoots with the police, and that they've been shooting at protesters. They disguise it as like this, supposed quarrel between poor people, being like these, the street vendors, that feel the protests are, taken away from the negotiation. But in reality, it's, they're working with the police. And so you see how the British government deals, with these situations. But for now, we're seeing the same activity going on in Chile. And so, which is why we always stress the importance of, not counting on any of these governments to really, represent for the people. The people that represent for the people. So there's a lot of energy in Chile, but we're clear that it's energy that's also global, and that, the economic model, liberalism is in crisis, and, post-pandemic, folks hit the streets when, the price of cooking oil goes up, and the price of milk goes up, and that inflation is happening worldwide. We don't see I think we're going to see a historic moment coming up. So, hopefully that historic moment serves the benefit of the people and not, not become worse.
Yeah, and brother, I wanted to ask you. So when you were coming up and you began to want to do music and stuff like this, who inspired you? Which musician inspired you to do your thing as you do it?
All right, so for putting context, I grew up. I was in high school in the late 90s. You know what I'm saying? So, I grew up listening to a variety of music that was coming out in that era. So I was a huge fan, like on the music tip, I was a huge fan of Nas. Nas, Common, before he was sunny in the face. But I also came up bumping like, I was in the hood, we bumping Crucial Conflict and Twista, a lot of Chicago, like y'all grew up in Chicago. But to me, my beat, a lot of the East Coast influence, my beat thing, I was heavily into that on the hip hop thing. But then I was also like, there's also musical influences that weren't in hip hop. I'm a huge fan of Cesar Rodriguez, and like that whole, kind of like, that movement, because Cara, Incubimani. And so it's crazy because there's even a lot of the music production that you hear in Rebel Diaz. We weren't maybe sampling James Brown and a lot of the funk like this, because my parents were really bumping funk. My parents were bumping, the soul craft. So for us, there's a lot of that influence, too, a lot of the Latin American influence. I'm a big fan of KRS-One. And then the West Coast had a lot of areas. I was a big fan of Far Side, so the Mission, the whole vibe of cool Tribe Called Quest.
Oh, yeah.
New York City, But, yeah, man, but then I was going to bump NWA.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I bumped that the first Sonic, crazy. I bumped that Dr. Dre crazy, when all of it came out. So, Dr. Hill, a lot of influences, Dr. Hill on the Latino tip, it was rapping by Ringwood, Section Hall III, the Dope, or the Low Life. A lot of bilingual influences too. I feel like that. King G, alcoholics, D-nuts.
Mm.
So I'm ahead. I get a bump in hip hop. You feel me? So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. No, you got good taste, brother. We're on the same page, and I wanted to ask you too, like, as you're doing this now, like, what's some of your upcoming projects that you'd like the listeners? Are you guys working on like a new album? What are you guys doing? Anything up and coming that you would like to, let the listeners know to be on the lookout for?
yeah. So I'm doing a solo project that I'm gonna be dropping soon, real soon. It's called Working Class Rapper. You know what I'm saying? And it's a look at pretty much. And I've been doing this. Rebel Diaz started 16 years ago. And that's been. I'll never forget. I quit my job in 2005, and I remember being like, talking to my boss, being like, "Yo, I hope I can get unemployment, because that means I got 6 months of at least a little bit of something to fall back on. The music shit don't pop off." And I remember that by September of that year, we already had our first international tour in Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
We had our first tour. And so I knew things were doing well. And so Working Class Rap up there is also like the reality, like, yo, man, there's a lot of us out here that maybe ain't got a Billboard hit song, but that been putting this for years. We got fans all over the world. And, we may not be that huge on social media or a lot of, we more using the game at this point. It's still active.
Mm-hmm.
And so the record Working Class Rapper gives a little bit of, that reality of just being, having a kid and just being just still doing music, still traveling the world and very Nigeria. And that's Working Class Rapper. That's produced by a producer out of London called Asian Change.
Mm.
He's no producer. That's the album that I got with him solo. And then Rebel Diaz music is always active. And we're going to be coming to the Rebel Diaz music as well. And so, yeah, man, just stay active. I'm going to be in Chile a lot. A lot of collabs with a lot of piano artists. And yeah, just ready to do music.
Mm. That's beautiful, brother. And what do you see as, I mean, what would satisfy you with your music, brother, as a contribution to the movement? What would you like to see, or what do you feel your music does to the masses, or what do you hope it does? What do you try to make your music do? Because we were just talking about revolutionary culture and the role of revolutionary culture, in any movement that is advancing the people. What do you feel like? What would you like to see your music do, brother?
What's crazy is that the culture, the movement, a lot of times, culture is talking about, like, say, like the revolution was had a recipe. It gets kind of spoken of as like this. Like a little season that you put on top of the meal. And I feel like it needs to be more than just the sazon or the flavor. It got to be one of the main ingredients.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Because the role of culture, at the end of the day, is to make the ideas of the revolution be irresistible.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
So
Wow.
that's why I feel like culture is so important, which is why also, capitalism will try to co-opt culture.
Absolutely.
Whenever you have culture,
Right.
the point is, look, whenever you have culture that comes from communities that live positions of oppression or from marginalized communities, 90% of the time, the messages that come out of those communities are going to be messages of resistance or messages of survival to that system. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so capitalism is easier to co-opt the culture. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. When you first had hip hop come out, MCs like Melly Mel, right? Melly Mel came out with It's Like a Jungle Sometimes. It makes you wonder how people going under, right?
Yeah.
Pushing glass everywhere. People put like he was describing the Bronx. You know what I mean? You had artists like Chuck D talking about fighting the power. You know what I mean? There was music is also representative of the times. You know what I'm saying? You have NWA come out to fuck the police right around the time Rodney King was saying was going on. These things are not disconnected from social reality. But what happens is that capitalism figures out, hey, we can control rap music by funding messages that are not messages of resistance. What are the messages that get funded? If you look at the music today, this is like they're like commercial jingles for the prison complex. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's no other way to put it. When you know, pushing pharmaceutical drugs by the game, like you're not even like the Moricuas, the Puerto Rican thing is the East Coast. It's not deck that out. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't even hide it. They selling you Percocet Molly, my name, man, record. And so I think a lot of times you say you follow the money. You know, when you look at labels like Interscope, right? Interscope, Dr. Dre, Jimmy IV, you know, the whole East Coast, West Coast beat. You know, you look at who are the ones that signed artists like Chief Keef, which is like the verse to drill music, which is gang banging on records, you know, drill music in Chicago. This is Universal. Maybe I really, who owns Universal? You look at who owns Universal, who has the largest amount of shares of Universal? It's a company by the name of General Electric. If you look at one of the largest power companies in the world.
Right.
If you look at who the number one funder of the private prison industrial complex is, it's General Electric. So you have to really just follow the money and realize that the same ones funding the rap music industry are the same ones funding prison. And so I feel like, you know, kind of like, you know, I'm not coming on a tangent here, but the idea is that the premise of culture, counterculture, is that important because it's a weapon. The enemy uses it as a weapon against us. You know what I'm saying? And so it's super important to have revolutionary music, revolutionary culture, where you do revolutionary theater, revolutionary documentary filmmaking. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a revolutionary imagination needs to only expand and grow. We always say, when we organize in the hood, we say, you can't just uphold, you got propose. We clear. We against capitalism, we against exploitation. You know what I'm saying? What are we for? People have housing, people have schools, people have, you know, a life of dignity. What does that life of dignity look like? It includes culture. It includes revolutionary culture. Not a culture, you know, that sells us death and sells us misogyny and, you know, values that are values in capitalism.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so, most of the new shit, I feel like my music, in many ways, I ain't gonna lie to you, I feel like a lot of my dreams of what I've envisioned as when I was younger, a lot of it is real, true. You know, like, it's bugged out. I be having all these pictures. Like, I feel like there's different definitions of success, you know what I'm saying? Except for me, like, I'm always be like, man, I'm successful if I'm making money. To me, I feel successful when I have a homie send me a selfie wearing a Rebel Diaz hoodie and he's in the South of Chile standing in front of a fucking fire barricade that they did because they protested the police. Or if I have a homie in Greece wearing a Rebel Diaz shirt or they shut shit down with the anarchists in the South Square, like, my music has allowed me to see the world and realize that, like, there's so many pockets of resistance.
Right,
whether
so
it's
many.
the anarchists in Berlin, in Greece, you know, people from the Mutualismo movement to Italy, like, I done been to Australia.
Wow.
And speaking with revolutionaries over there.
You're international, brother. That's what's up. Hey, brother, but
learn about the Aboriginal struggles of the people. So,
oh yeah.
I feel like my music has really, but like I said, every artist will be lying if they tell you that they want the music to reach the masses. And I feel like we've reached a lot, but we can always reach more.
Absolutely.
So that's why I keep doing it, man.
And the sky's the limit, brother. But but we've run out of time now. That went quick. That went
Thank
quick,
you.
brother. We're gonna have to.
I'll be getting my thoughts on it. We already know about better than say.
It's all good, brother. We're gonna bring you back for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you let the listeners know like any kind of contact info? Where could they get a hold of you at? Is there a website? Is there Facebook, or what is it? So they
follow us on social media.
Awesome.
At Rebel Diaz.
Perfect.
That's REBELDIAZ. I have one on social media as well. But you can also, my personal one is at Rebel Diaz Stars with a Z, STARZ at the end altogether, with the Diaz Stars. But yeah, rebeldiaz.com has most of the info, up to date on what's going on with us. And but we have a lot of projects. We have a children's book, ABC, the hip hop coming out with Nicer. That's cool.
Okay.
For the kind of rapper album and this documentary Primera coming out. So stay tuned. We'll be out there on the West Coast. We'll be out there on the West Coast in June.
Oh, we'll
Perfect.
see
Yeah,
you,
we'll see
brother.
you.
We will be there. Absolutely. We love your music here. And, on behalf of the Chicano Nation, me and Karena want to say, we send our revolutionary love your way, brother. And we are here, playing your music like there's no tomorrow. So with that being said, brother, you take care, struggle forward, and we send our love, brother.
Hasta la victoria siempre. Buenas noches.
Siempre. And that was Rebel Diaz here on Free Aztlan, and that's it for the week.
Yep.
And we'll be back next week, right, Karina?
Yep.
And so you all take care, struggle forward, and remember, Free Aztlan.
Free Aztlan. Omateo. Thank you so much.